knowing where we're at. It seems like the debate is mostly between 2 and 1. So whether or not, can we hear arguments in favor of 1? So Bernd already spoke. Lorelai, do you have a?
Okay, my main reason I voted 1 is because I'm just curious, and I haven't done that in a long time, and I don't know, I feel like I've seen just a lot of complication come from having the open budget in some places, and I'm kind of curious. I know that it's a part of like old world business strategies for a reason, and I'm just sort of curious about it, and I think it's something that we could change later. So I'm kind of interested in the experiment. But
you voted 1 or 2?
1.
And you're curious and not being open about it.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how it goes, you know? I also would like to say that 3 is my second choice after that. I think it's either 1 or 3. Like, why would we go with 2? Why would we go halfway?
I could definitely more easily be convinced of 3 than 1. What's the, like, can you say more about your curiosity, like, with 1?
Maybe I can give some 1 arguments. Okay. I think that there's a lot of value in doing what 95% of every organization that we interact with every day does, and there's a reason for it, right? Like it helps you stay lean. Some people don't. Some people have different situations than other people, and there's and there some people will be able to be paid less, and some people will be able to be paid, need to be paid more. Bernd is in Switzerland, right? And Max is in Ukraine, but so like there's so many other complications, and when you open it up to everyone seeing it, you also have to then do the work to justify it, and that creates a lot of extra admin because otherwise there's a whole lot of, why is Bernd getting that much and I'm getting this much, and it's like, well, now someone has to do conflict res between all of this comparison stuff. Whereas if you do 1, you just cut all that out.
I can add to that. So that's exactly what I fear is the discussions. So if we say we go for 2 and there's no discussion and nobody is going to argue about that, then I'm fine with that. But I've seen it before that people spend more time discussing that then, and even over coffee, even like how do you say the floor talk? I don't know if you say that in English.
Yeah.
That just it distracts. In my opinion, it just distracts, and it shouldn't be. You should either, if you go with 1, you should trust the people that make the decisions to make the right decisions and proper payment for everyone. And the same goes with 2, because if you start arguing it, then it's just a waste of time, And 3 to me is just it multiplies the argumentation, and it really distracts. And I've seen this in Swan City. I've seen this in other projects that people really ask about that part, and I was naive to answer it because I thought, yeah, we're transparent, why not? And then you really start opening a can of worms, and it's just not. It doesn't support the project at all. These discussions. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. I can agree with that, Chris, but also like how I see it is that like in companies I'm trying to participate, there is like partner like structure, so like partners in crime, and we own this thing we do together. So, and if you would have an investor, for example, it would be totally like plausible for him to know like how's the company doing in terms of like, are you spending the money right, are you going to run the cash, like, so we are in a way are like investors in this, the first investors. So in order for us to feel that it's ours, understand what's working, and be able to raise the tension when I see that something's not working, or understand the situation overall. So, for example, when I saw the like numbers, I could kind of better understand like what is my contribution, how it compares to others, and so on. So it's like information needed to make decision on the partners level. If I don't have this information, it would be like I'm blind.
Lorelai?
Okay, sorry, my hand's been up for a while. I have to reorganize.
Okay, while you reorganize, just to get Sponette involved, so what we're debating is open budgeting. And so when we reference 1, that means nobody knows what each other is being paid. Referencing 2 means internally we know the budget and who's getting paid what, but externally no one knows. Your mom can't look up your salary, but Max can. And then number 3 would be that everyone knows what everybody's getting paid in the common stack, and your mom could Google it.
Okay, so my more philosophical reason for option 1 is that like we have this principle of decentralization, right? One of the extensions of that principle is the people most directly impacted by something are the ones that hold the wisdom and the responsibility and should hold the power about changing or knowing about that thing, right? And the people who are most directly impacted by someone's salary are the person who's receiving it and the organization that is paying it. And so to extend it outwards in like a righteous way, like everyone should be able to know, like everyone should be able to judge, then I feel like that's taking away from this principle that like that really it's the people that are close to this agreement who should be making judgments about it. And like it kind of takes away from just the trust that like who's the right person to decide about what amount of money is right for you? You and the person paying you. It's not anyone else's job. And so like or position, like no one else can have as much wisdom on it. And I feel like it just encourages this comparison thing where like your job satisfaction in a team shouldn't be about like comparing yourself to other people and what their situation is. It should be like, am I actually happy? Is this enough for me? And I don't think that knowing others' salaries should change whether or not you're happy.
I think it shouldn't change whether or not you're happy if you're like in a situation that you're really good with, right? But if you're not good with the situation and you're making do, and then you find out suddenly that someone's making twice as much as you for doing the same work, it's because people are already like, I think when it becomes a problem for people is when they're already like somehow dissatisfied.
Chris has something to add to.
So yeah, I agree. Indeed, it becomes a problem when you are already dissatisfied, and then you start focusing on it, and then it becomes a lot of discussion. So I completely agree with Bernd on that point. That can be hugely distracting and take so much time. We also even had it at some point with Giveth, and then like the comparisons were starting to be made, and it was indeed because people were already dissatisfied with really on a value basis. But the thing that Lorelai was saying, like it is something between the person who pays you and yourself. The two of you can like evaluate that. I slightly disagree there in the sense that like we did an exercise for Aragon DXC with like the girl who was like really basing it on a lot of objective facts. How much is the cost of living where you live? What is it? What are the things that you're doing? And she tried to create a bit of an objective scale. And it's like, I personally have the tendency in such a situation as this to underpay myself because I'm already so busy. So I just stress when I don't have the time right now to think long term, but I know that about 50% of what I make, well, 40% probably right now goes to taxes in order to be able to like tell to the government how I am able to pay my house. So like, and I'm not making enough money and I don't want to compare myself to others, but I would like, even if it's not now, but in the future that we maybe hire such a person to do an evaluation, so that even if we go for one now, that at one point we can evaluate and go to two. That's just an idea.
Okay.
Long term.
Just one other. Well, no, go ahead.
No, go. Jeff.
I was just. I've dealt with organizations in the past where I felt open would be better because of potential. I mean, it is between the individual and the company in terms of determining that relationship, but if those funds are misallocated, I'm not saying that's going to happen in this organization, but then it does concern other people who may be feeling they're delivering more value, but those resources are not available because they're going to other people. So this is a situation I've found myself in more poorly organized organizations in the past, but I don't see that as an issue here. But I do also think there needs to be a value calculation outside of just what is your cost of living, because I may have a taste for very fancy whiskey. And I mean, that may be something that someone else forgoes to have more funds available for other things, future retirement, whatever. So I think current cost of living is one of many factors that should be taken into account when determining these things, which I'm not saying it is, but.
Svanette, do you want to give an opinion?
On the one hand, I in one would be the best, because it just doesn't. The thing is, how do you value someone's contribution? Because it also depends on so many factors. How much time are you spending on it, or how much value are you delivering to the project? And indeed, like, what is your cost of living? And so everybody just should be incentivized enough to allocate the time necessary to complete this project successfully. So people should be liberated, so their time should be made free to work on this project. And I think that's an individual discussion with every one of us, because that's like cost of living is an aspect. Like Jeff said, it's not the only thing, of course. But for example, I live here in Belgium. My standards of living is much lower, or my cost of living for the same standard is much lower than Switzerland, for example. So, I mean, that can be taken into. Other than that, so if everybody's satisfied with the money that he or she's getting for the work she's performing, yeah, I mean, then that's fine, and the can continue. So I'm not in favor of like doing. So I'm in favor of. Although of course I think some things can be like deducted. No, not deducted, but. Sort of like guess, like if there's a certain budget to do this and there's like one person working in it, you sort of know his salary, you know, or what is expense to him for but my fear is just that if you start being too transparent about that, maybe people will start asking questions about each other's compensation, which don't really help the project forward. So my option would be
I think, did you say your option would be one?
Yes.
Okay. And Kai, do you have anything?
Sure. So there's these two different things. One is how open are we with our decisions, and the other thing is what do people get actually paid? There is a number that, so one thing is like, if you have it transparent, it will increase satisfaction only if there's not too much difference between the highest paid person and the lowest paid person. And so in real economy, this was measured to be 20 times, which is crazy. So you might see from this number how equal we actually have, or at least for Giveth, how we try to be equal with our salaries by not just going so high, except one exception, but there was an exception, right? So if we have kind of equal pay and it's very transparent, this would be very positive for everybody, and it would only create a certain kind of accountability that you really, because you think, oh, everybody earns the same. I see everybody working so hard, therefore I want to work hard, so I'm still accepted in this group. But this is one possible effect, and I just would love if we don't try to hide it away. So I think the minimum in one is still to have the budget open, right, and say these are the salaries that we pay without saying granularly how much we pay the individual. Is that correct?
I think the general strategy, if we went with number one, would be to have open books to the extent of this much money went to project management, this much money went to communications. I mean, open to the public.
Right.
This much money went to, block science. Like the vendors would have very open books. It would be about the same as what they get to see, right? We say block science gets, 200K total and these 5 payments or whatever for designing the augmented bonding curve, but we don't know how much Sargam gets paid. And that would be the same for our internal team.
So if it's like that, so I voted 3, but I have to say that actually the standard is pretty good. So I think it would be fine with all of those options, except like hiding how much in salaries is being paid. But I do want to argue that the more open it is, the more engaging it can be. And like the negative experiences that were told, they come from unequal pay and not from having an open discussion about it or an open thing.
Max, I want to give you last word if you have any, and then we got to end this discussion.
In my company, I was very hesitant to do that. First of all, at least we had on the managers level, we had open budget because it was hard to hide information from them. We had one Excel sheet where they can make decisions and I can plan their spendings and so on. But then after a while, more people needed this information, and I started to share until everybody had this information. Now open. And well, in my experience, it first of all, I had no such thing that I saw this guy's salary, I want more. There were no such conversations, but also were more conceptual things about how we value this or those stuff inside the organization overall, right? And should we maybe use some just approach or something like that? So it's not if people if partners, some specific partners desire not to have this information overall, they can not look at it, right? But it doesn't mean that more than one person would have information to that. So because board probably would have information to that, and maybe in some context other people. So and it also connects all to the maturity level of the team. So as people have higher values and standards, they can, for example, go for personal underpay, knowingly. For example, ask less if they see that there is some need for that and so on. So it can play in both ways.
I think in this team it generally plays in the latter way, where people ask for less money when it's open. But either way, we have to end this discussion. This seems like something for decisions tomorrow, and maybe I'll talk about tomorrow. The way I want to do decisions is that we actually just vote for a decider, and then liquid democracy style, but 100% liquid democracy style. So that's, I don't know. I will discuss that tomorrow. But either way, we need to move on to the macroscopic budget. I want to, if you check the core Telegram group, we have the document for the Common Stack roadmap and budget, internal facing. Thank you for making this beautiful table of contents, by the way. the common stack roadmap and budget. If you go to core group, it's linked there. We're also going to look at the other doc that Jeff wrote that derives off of
I
this.
can share a stream when you're ready for it, or I can share a screen of it right now.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I think that we'll do this in tandem, and Jeff will share his screen on the nice document, and I'll share, and everyone can read off the ugly document with all the details. So in general, our budget numbers are listed there. I'm not going to read out all the numbers. It's a waste of our time. But you can see that it's kind of focused on different iterations. And our budget depends on us reaching each number. So if we have 984, if we reach that, then we have one budget. You want me to share?
Yeah, I'm sharing this one. And you were saying pull that one up from the Telegram, or
no?
Okay,
I think everyone should have the other one up. So like,
you want me to share this?
Yeah. So everything. No, I mean you share yours, and this is fine. Everyone can look at this one individually. Okay. Oh, I guess I can do this.
Yeah, no, that's. I've got it.
So everything is built off the iteration numbers. That's kind of the general idea. Our budgets are built off of that, and so are the multipliers. Everything is based off of this. So, including like the estimations for the tech whitelist and how they all go. In general, Jeff has way better diagrams to talk about the advancements of the budget as we advance and where our focuses are. But I do think that this kind of spreadsheet here, which is pretty ugly, but it really breaks down the numbers well.
This is the drill down.
Yeah.
This is our internal drill down on what we'll be presenting to the public, which will look much more like on the shared screen, something like this. So we'll have it broken down by iteration and sort of buckets of spending without going component by component. We can kind of break down management communications, legal, component, CAD, and buffer. And that's definitely open to discussion as far as how granularly that should be broken down.
Yeah. So in general, for buffer, it's always 10%. And we're going to have a discussion about this range of raise idea, where it's like the max raise and stuff. I haven't been following that discussion, so can't speak to it, but we'll talk about that later. Currently, the way it's set up is that 10% is buffer, and then anything we raise between the two iterations also is buffer. There is no like idea that, oh, if we raise more than what we need, then we give the money back. It's like, no, we take any dollars that people give us to achieve the goals that we say we will achieve.
Question about that. So are we having discrete fundraisers for each iteration, or is one continuous fundraiser?
One continuous fundraise all the way through.
Okay, so if we raise more than 984,000 DAI, like the first, the 985th is going towards iteration 2.
It's going, it depends.
Because if not, if we spend 1.2 on our first iteration, then people will expect us to get iteration 2 done in 500,000.
Well, here's the thing: is that if we when we start spending that last $1,000, then we will be really close to finishing that first iteration, right? So like, right. Well, because we will have like, if we're not really close, like then
what if this if this happens on day 1 of our raise? We raise 985.
Yeah, we raise spending. Yeah, so then we have 985 in our coffers, and we start spending that money. And we're continuing
according to this schedule.
We're
not,
yeah.
That
so that 1,000
is still earmarked for iteration 2.
Actually, 100,000 plus 1,000 is earmarked as buffer. So we don't spend buffer until we go through the rest of our budget, and we wouldn't spend buffer at all, hopefully, until, of course, we get to this, like, really close to launching the iteration. By then, we will know, oh, actually, no, we have enough money to raise the next one. So, like, this is this is now earmarked for iteration 2. In fact, we're already starting building iteration 2, so we start spending that money. We're not launching, sorry, but finishing the iteration, right? Yeah.
Sorry, I can't find the conviction voting on this thing.
Conviction voting is DAO.
Oh, okay.
Because it doesn't start out as conviction voting. It starts out as Aragon, well, I assume some basic DAO. It might be Moloch, it might be Aragon, it might be DAO Stack, whatever is off the shelf. And that's why in the first iteration, you can see we actually spend about a quarter of our funds on CAD, and then we have a lot of money also in the design of the token bonding curve, creating a basic model on CAD. So really, you can kind of think of the design pieces as also CAD. And then the token bonding curve, that 140 is basically the minimum audit or the minimum amount of budget I think we could need for, minimum, maximum, like a good estimation of what we will have to pay a vendor to deploy Zargum's design of the token bonding curve. And then we have 20K for audits, and then we have 10K that will probably just be added to the 140K as the vendor who does the token bonding curve will just implement a DAO on top of it.
Which will probably be enough to box Aragon.
I mean, this is spec'd. This budget was estimated via Aragon Black. So it's estimated, assuming that we can get Aragon Black to rip out their contracts, put new ones in that they write from Zargum's design, and then plug it into an Aragon DAO, and we have this very basic it is mobile friendly, probably not mobile first, but mobile friendly, basic DAO.
Yeah.
We also will notice there's no money for audits on the DAO because we don't need to do an audit. They're not changing any lines of code on the DAO itself. But we do have 15K for retrofitting Giveth, basically making sure that Giveth can put the shares of this token. So if they, not by default, but if they want, they can use Giveth as an escrow for their default token. And then we have, beyond that, that's kind of like the obvious stuff. Then the rest is sort of like admin. We have 20K for the legal organization. This does not include back pay. This does not include, covering any of the costs that we've had up to this point. It covers a very small percentage of it. I would say like less than 30%. So that's really interesting. There's kind of like this middle ground that we will eat into the iteration that will be covered in iteration 2. The like my repayment for fronting this is actually part of iteration 2's budget. And the first dollars that are spent in iteration 2 are covering that. So if we get to 1.1 mil, then I'm covered, right? We don't have, but otherwise I'm not. So if we get 984 and that's all we get, I'm out of luck. I'll get some portion out of this legal budget, but not enough to actually cover the fees. Project management is
But
like.
you said 20, but it says 120.
Yeah, 120. Well, 20 is how much I have budgeted for back pay.
Oh, okay.
So, but we've already spent 20, we're already caught. But either way, that next budget is in iteration 2, and that just means that we can keep this beautiful number that I love so much from 984. So add a 1 to it, and it's the year I was born. I feel pretty good. I like this. I like this idea. And then project management, we have a flat 100. This is generally like so legal covers Lorelei, Jeff, and Bern's salary, so the people that are in the association. Also covers legal fees and Yeah, and a rainy day fund. But and then project management covers me, Sponette, Chris. Well, sorry, no, not Chris. It's me, Sponette, Max, and anybody else who is kind of in the project management box. And then communications covers. I think project management might cover Parker as well. And then communications covers Adam, Chris, and I think Abby was under there, but so there is a little thing for Abby that she's probably not in this anymore. So that's like a little bit of extra buffer that we have.
Did you guys talk to her?
I haven't talked to her.
Z's been talking to her. We're gonna figure out a meetup and see if we can rally some encouragement from Berlin.
Okay, cool. I mean, she's not. I think that we can stay lean without her, and it's not a big deal. And she has another gig, is what I understand. Yeah. Yeah, we don't need another human. We need to stay lean. We need to stay lean. So then we have conferences and gatherings. That's actually this one, which we've had a budget for 10K. There will be no other big team meeting if we don't get past this. And then post maintenance is kind of like just paying someone to like maintain the repo for a couple months if this is our last iteration. And then we also have 20K for Mahoots. Mahoots is like the community organizers for pushing the culture and procedures and policies of the Token Engineering Commons thing. We will not use the name.
I feel like that should be nested somewhere.
We will not.
Let's nest that. But then
We will not use Mahoots. We won't use the term Mahoots. But guess what? Everyone knows what I mean when I say it.
On live stream.
So, yeah, no, it's not evangelist. It's Mahoot. It's the community managers and like the people that are writing the policies and rallying the community behind them, making sure that the DAO can interface with the humans within the DAO.
Let's talk about
You'll
budget.
always call them Mahoots for the rest of your life.
Really?
Yeah, you personally.
I don't know. I think it's the best word.
If you want to be more Western and be more Catholic, you can call it shepherd. But you know that is the word. I know you do.
I like that. I like that.
Shepherd sounds great to me.
Hey, I already suggested Shepherd a long time ago.
Did
People
it?
didn't
It's
like
on the
it.
list.
Yeah,
Didn't like it until a man
well,
said
the
it.
problem is that with shepherds versus Mahoots is that shepherds are the boss.
Oh, yeah.
Shepherds are the boss. They own the sheep. They whip the sheep. They do whatever they want.
So
Sure.
does Mahoots.
No,
But that's-
Mahoots do not. Yeah,
It's
Mahoots,
not fun at this
Mahoots get killed.
You know,
all the
my
time.
issue with Mahoots is we always end up talking about them when we should
No
be talking
kidding.
about other things.
Okay, so budget.
Is there a name for the dog of the shepherd? Or a term?
Sheepdog, sheepdogs. That's pretty good. But okay, let's keep going. That's it. I just wanted to walk through the budget for iteration 1, and then we kind of have the same general ideas for iteration 2, 3, 4, and 5. In iteration 2, we add Giveth, and that's the big increase in cost. And you can kind of see in this column, there's like 235 going into Giveth. And we also add a decent amount more for legal, project management, and community management. But Giveth is the big expenditures. In iteration 3, obviously, it's the DAO. There's a lot of extra money. There's a pretty big gap between iteration 2 and iteration 3. One of the larger gaps, in fact, I think it's the largest gap of the top of the first 3. Iteration 4 is just the analytics. So we have for every iteration we continue to improve and spend money on updating the repos and taking the lessons that we learned from before. But in iteration 4, we add a bunch of money into the analytics dashboard, but it's only 80. It's not that big.
I was just going to show you on the screen here. I guess I could say it to everybody. I broke down kind of these fundraising tranches by the amount added because I found that like when we're looking on Griff's screen here, like the project seems to get really expensive by the time you get to iteration 6. And I was thinking perhaps people didn't understand that it was a cumulative cost. So I worked to break that down iteration by iteration in the fundraising doc that's shared here.
Yeah. So yeah, and then iteration 5 and 6 are probably not really going to happen the way they're broken down here in the budget. I mean, even the iteration 4 is pretty dicey as far as like the details. There's a lot of fuzz in there. Like, I don't really know if it will break down like that. I feel really confident in iteration 1. I feel pretty confident about iteration 2 as well. And iteration 3 is pretty good. It's not that great, but conviction voting is a pretty big like question mark about how much it will cost to actually implement, because it's pretty complicated and there isn't much to build off. But iteration 4 is almost a wild guess, and iteration 5 is a wild guess. Same with 6. They're just, like
future bucks.
Yeah, I mean, these are 2 years down the road.
Yeah, whatever's not done by then.
Yeah, I'm hoping they'll actually be a lot cheaper, because there will be a lot of other work that we can build off of.
Right.
Other people who are working with our code and improving it, and other people who are working on totally separate things that we can group in. But the real confusion for me after iteration 3 to iteration 4 is direction, and because once we have conviction voting, and for iteration 4 we'll definitely want to include the analytics, but maybe we'll want to include something more for the token bonding curves that we feel is extremely necessary. Some innovation that someone else has built by then, right? And there really isn't space for that kind of I don't know what you want to scope creep. I don't think that there's enough space for scope creep in general in this budget. But
so this is one of the things that I want to bring up as a concern is, are we leaving enough buffer to ensure that we're doing this? I think it's important to stay lean. I think it's important to stay scrappy. But I think it's also important to make sure that we have the funds to acquire the resources that we need to get this done without people in our project burning out from like overwork and tight deadlines and everything else. So I just want to heat check with people who have done these kinds of projects before and ask if a 10% buffer, and I mean, I think it's 10% per iteration until we hit the final iteration, where we have a bit more buffer to spread through all of the iterations. But is that realistic? Should we be aiming higher than that? And I think the biggest sensitivity is we want to keep iteration 1 below $1 million. But beyond that, like if iteration 2 is 1.7 or 1.8, or I mean, those numbers I feel like we're a bit more flexible with.
When is the first time we can hire someone new in this budget? Iteration 5?
I mean, we'll have space. Well, no. I mean, we'll have space to hire people if we need.
When?
I mean, right away. I mean, the thing is, we can't hire more organizing people, but we will be hiring block science. We'll be hiring vendors. We'll be hiring,
sure.
And we'll be offloading tasks that we need for them. But how much bureaucracy?
Like the more internal team. Well, I'm thinking about a way to answer Jeff's question, and when I picture it, I'm like, when we talk about burnout and stuff, I imagine, after a year of working together, I totally imagine all of our tasks have inflated so much to the point where we're all wishing, God, man, I just wish we had one more person on our internal team.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's to me how I would go about answering this question.
A year down the line, we should have done basically 2 raises, because I feel like we do our first raise, and then right before we launch the first iteration is launched and we lock the whitelist, then there will be basically a second raise where everyone's like, hey, if you buy into this whitelist right now, if you donate to the Common Stack right now, then in 2 weeks you will be able to be an initiator in the tech token, in the hatch of the token engineering commons. So there will be a lot of people who are already in the whitelist, who already gave us funds. They will be like, you know what? I'd like to put more money into that thing that's happening 2 weeks from now. So I'm going to throw down.
Yeah, I have a couple questions and thoughts that aren't super organized, so I'll do my best. First of all, getting back to what you were saying about skill creep. I mean, I understand like burnout and stuff, being an issue, getting overloaded with things, but a lot can also change in 2 years, right? In terms of the topology of the blockchain space, in terms of what is the bleeding edge, and so on. So I guess I'm wondering how much or little flexibility we're leaving ourselves. If something comes out that somehow makes what we're doing less revolutionary by comparison, how much flexibility do we have to do a sort of contained pivot? Another way of kind of, I think I can.
So for that one, I would say the flexibility we have is sort of dependent on narrative and how we do it. We don't have a white paper, so we're not like committing to doing what's in the white paper, which is what most classical ICOs have done. Where it's like we have a legal entity and we're going to perform what the white paper does. We're going to have blog posts and we're going to have relatively informal things. So we're committed to whatever we say. That's
right.
And none of that's out yet.
Question number 2 that is a fast follow-up to that. Sorry, Max, but real fast. It's like, so looking at this this chart, right, with the the 6 iterations of whether there's 5 or 6 now, and that it goes up to 6.74, I think. But that if we don't raise it all at once, we can kind of overshoot, and then we'll have that extra to burn. Does that mean that if we do raise 6.74, we're suddenly kind of locked in to a tighter budget to do all this stuff that we're talking about doing? Whereas if we keep getting it like in between without hitting ceilings when we do like a fundraising round, you see where I'm kind of going?
Yeah, that we get to keep all of that. We get to use that money as buffer. I think the important piece here is that we need to decide.
Like, is this 10% buffer enough? I guess that's a long.
Well, so the thing is, 10% is the buffer plus whatever extra we raise above.
But if we get 6.74 flat,
then we have 15% buffer on the 6.74.
Oh, we do.
Yeah, so we have 15% buffer. We have $1 million in buffer on 6.74.
Okay.
So I do think that $1 million in buffer is pretty 990,000. I feel like that's,
yeah, I just wanted to.
I feel like that's like, okay, if we, like the way I was thinking buffer is like, what happens if the conviction voting thing needs to be just completely redone? Or any one of these issues needs to be completely redone. Oh, okay. Then we could pull it off.
I have a different calculation I made just while we were talking. So I hear that the iteration 4 are, if we can manage to get funding until iteration 4, including iteration 4, we really have a great product. We have the very good product. At the end, it's the other two, like 5 and 6, are nice to have. They're important at the end for usability and everything, but it's actually nice to have. So what I did is just I added 25% to each of the 3 iterations beforehand. So the thinking is the following. So we have like a minimum, the first minimum that we have to raise is 984. Otherwise, we don't even start to work. So 984 is the minimum that we have to get funding for. Now there's also the multiplier approach. So we have a 2x multiplier for getting into iteration number 1. So we can extend
2.5.
2.5 even. Okay, sorry. Then so we can play with that part too. So this motivates people to invest. So if we keep a time frame. So we have a financial goal and we have a timing goal, where we say, let's say 3 weeks is a time that we set ourselves to get to the 984,000, or 4 weeks. I don't know if we even decided that part yet, but there's a time frame to it. If we reach the 984,000, we still can continue the raise for the multiplier, for the 2.5x multiplier, to add another 25% to our budget, which would lead, so the max for iteration 1 would be 1.26 million, roughly. This is not exact numbers, but I made them so that at the end we can finance. So let me finish that first. So this is the iteration 1, and I did the same thing for iteration 2 and 3. So we have a minimum for iteration 2 that we need is 726,000, and this is for multiplier 2, and the max within the time frame would be 940,000. And the same for iteration 3 would be 1.14 for a minimum raise for iteration 3, and within the time frame we would have 1.46 million.
So we have a hard stop in 3 minutes.
Yes. Okay. I'm hopefully done in 1 minute. So if we add these 3, if everything stops, nobody wants to invest after those 3, and we make the max raise out of those 3, we have enough budget to pay the 780,000 we need as a minimum for iteration 4. So we've sort of raised money indirectly for iteration 4, which would be the minimum product that we might want to, that we feel comfortable that people can fork, and it's a running product. So this would be so there's a minimum and there's a maximum to each iteration, and it's not funding the next iteration. It's actually funding the 4th, 5th, and maybe even 6th iteration if we go forward.
So I really like this range idea. I don't fully understand it. I will say I think that it's wrong to say that we have 10% buffer. That's just not true, because if we just all of a sudden reach the next iteration, then okay, we start working on it. We will have some money sitting there, and we can continue to raise money. Right, so like we will start reading those iterations, and we will always be able to raise more money. But I do want to discuss that min max thing, but it'll have to happen in a later meeting.
So just one last comment on that. So why do I think this is important? Because I think the multiplier is the motivation for people to invest. And if we cap the multiplier with the minimum, then we sort of take out more investments that we could have.
The challenge is narrative. So all of a sudden we have multiple numbers for multiple things, and that's why, to keep it simple, we just stayed with this number, this multiplier, done. Now maybe we do 2.5 all the way to iteration 2. Yeah, I don't know, but or maybe we start with 3 and give advisors 3.5. I don't know, but then we start having issues with giving too much money into the hatch sale for people.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do that too big.
Yeah,
that's a good point. We need to calculate the hatch so that 20 million at the end.
Yeah. So anyway, we have to have a hard stop so we can have a 5-minute break before the next meeting. So we had some more questions, more opportunities. Sorry, I was a bad facilitator and I let the open budget discussion go on.
And the hoots.
And the mahoots. And the contentious mahoots.
We're gonna stop using it just so we don't lose 15 minutes every time.
I'll try.
Just kidding.
I'll try. Hey, you guys haven't found a better answer. If you guys find something better than like,
hey, we're not working on the Curry model.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was even better, dude. Dude, I still like Curry model better than Common Stack.
What else are we gonna call it? It's gotta be Curry model.
Curry
Give it
model.
time.
I
Give
did
it
like
time.
Curry model better.
Yeah.
Over Common Stack?
Yeah,
Oh my God.
this is the Curry model. It sounds delicious, doesn't
It
it?
sounds delicious.
feel like the common stack is much more
Delicious.
well.